How's it going, everyone, and welcome to Chapter 1 of the Story of Aeternum, a series which I will take you all along with me on a cinematic journey to the main story quest in New World, so you can get all of the lore without having to level up another character. But before we get into Chapter 1, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel with notifications on so you'll be notified when each chapter goes live. Now, let's dive in. Chapter 1, the Island of Aeternum. It was early October, 1609. I was recruited by a priest of Spanish origins in the Dutch Republic. The job was simple, or so we thought. We were to set sail from the port of Amsterdam in search of an island filled with untold riches that he referred to as the Island of Legend. Our ship, the Ambition, was captained by a man named Wildest Thorpe with a crew of roughly 20 men, all of which were highly experienced sailors. The priest would accompany us on the voyage as the navigator, since the island he spoke of wasn't charted on any maps, and he was one of the few people who had ever been there previously. We were heading there based on his word alone, which left a lot of the crew uneasy due to his strange demeanor, but the promise of immense riches persuaded us to follow him regardless. After weeks at sea, the voyage seemed to be going off without a hitch, until day 28, when a massive storm grew on the horizon. Most of the men assumed we would tack our way out of the storm's reach, but Captain Thorpe and the priest had other plans, informing the crew we would be heading straight into the heart of the storm. Many tried to reason with them and convince them to turn back, but to no avail, so we pushed on and sailed right into the horrific weather. In all of my years at sea, I had never seen anything quite like this storm. It was as if there was a wall of clouds we were entering, constantly flickering lights of all kinds of colors as the lightning would strike and the thunder would roar all around us. As we got deeper into the storm, red glowing orbs began emerging around the ship, followed by trails of some kind of black liquidy substance. I couldn't quite process what it was I was seeing. The orbs would shoot around the ship, tearing through the sails and setting everything they touched ablaze. The waves and the wind were throwing the ship from side to side, ripping it apart, when out of nowhere, the priest emerged from his cabin and walked across the deck, ever so slowly, as if nothing was going on. There was a strange box in his hand. As he made his way to the bow of the ship, he opened the box, and an immense blue light shot out from within it, parting the storm in front of the ship. The weather seemed to be subsiding, until suddenly, Captain Thorpe appeared behind the priest and ran a dagger right through his back. The box slammed shut as it crashed to the deck of the ship, and immediately the storm came back, this time even more ferociously than before. But now, the red orbs that were flying around the ship, ripping it apart, began shooting down and latching onto the crew, driving them insane. Those who had been affected by the orbs immediately turned and began viciously attacking the rest of the crew as the ship continued to burn all around them. I attempted to make my way to the ship's wheel to see if I could maneuver us out of this storm, but I was blocked off by the first mate. He was blinded by rage, and there seemed to be no reasoning with him, so I grabbed the nearest sword I could and engaged with him. I had basic sword training as a child, but never had to put it to use until this moment. Luckily for me, the first mate seemed to be fighting with brawn and not brains, so I managed to easily outmaneuver him and eventually deal the killing blow. As I finished him off, several more of my former crewmates charged at me. It took everything in me to outsmart them and send them to their graves, but just as I finished off the last of them, the captain himself, Thorpe, came down from the helm and began approaching me with a massive sword in his hand. As he got nearer and ready to attack, the ship's mast finally gave in, crashing down through the hull of the Ambition, taking us all down into the dark cold waters below. I swam with all my might up from the depths below, and after what felt like an eternity, I finally made it to the surface, with very little oxygen to spare. Parts of the burning ship floated around me, as I saw what appeared to be land not far off in the distance. As I made my way to the shore, there was a large man-made structure before me, with stairs leading up to it. Just beside it, I managed to find some washed-up gear from the wreckage. I grabbed a rapier and a rifle, in case I ran into anyone or anything hostile on the island. Then, I began to make my way inside the structure. I was never trained on how to use these weapons, but I was going to have to learn quickly if I was going to protect myself. As I entered the structure, a large stone wall opened itself in front of me, as if by magic, and off in the distance behind it, I could see what appeared to be a man in Roman military armor. As I approached him to see if I could get some information about where I was, he turned towards me, and without saying a word, began charging at me. He was easy enough to outsmart, as I dealt the finishing blow to him, and I could already feel myself becoming better with my blade the more I used it. It was very odd, though, that he would just charge at me like that without asking questions first. I continued along the path, which led me out of the structure, and followed it for what felt like ages. There were several more strange creatures along the path that once again mindlessly charged at me, and I was forced to deal with. As I continued on walking, I began to wonder if this could be the island the priest was talking about. Wherever I was, though, it was unlike anywhere I had ever seen before. One moment I would be seeing eerie landscapes, and the next I would be getting lost in stunning views that almost seemed supernatural. But I continued to push on along the path until I came to a structure with stairs leading up into it. As I began to enter the structure, I could see what appeared to be some kind of deer off in the distance. It seemed as if it was coated in wood, with a strange green glow coming from its eyes. As I got nearer to it, it turned and ran off. I followed after it up along the path, till I found myself at the edge of a cliff. From here, I could get a good view of my surroundings, and I was shocked at how big this island I had found myself on actually was. There was tons of shipwrecks scattered along the coastline, and strange glows coming off of landmasses. It even appeared as if rocks were floating around a mountain off in the distance. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before, and I couldn't quite believe my eyes. I took some time to take in my surroundings and gather my bearings before continuing on along the path. Hopefully this path would lead me to someone who could help me find answers and get me off of this island for good. So I descended along the path. Everything seemed to get darker the further along I went down it, and I could see an ominous looking cavern entrance off in the distance. As I approached the entrance, just outside of it lay the deer I had been following, lifeless. Surely something evil lurked within this cave, but there was no turning back now. Inside the cave glowed bright red, with black energy-like substances weaving around it, very much like what I had seen previously in the storm. I continued to make my way deeper and deeper inside until I came across what seemed like a pool off in the distance, with a man doing something just beside it. I slowly crept my way closer to see what the man was up to.
You must become something greater. The fountain. Drink and accept my gift.
As he turned around, I realized it was Captain Thorpe. His flaming sword flew into his hand as if by magic, before he began charging towards me. I never fought so hard in my life. The sheer force behind every one of his swings was hard to stop, and there was a strange glow emanating from his body that didn't seem natural. He fought with sheer strength, but I managed to use my superior speed against him, and slowly chip away at his armor until I dealt a blow that really had him hurt. Suddenly though, just off in the distance, I began to hear what sounded like whispers of voices calling towards me, leading me to a strange box that looked a lot like the one the priest had on the ship. I approached the box, and as I touched it, it flung open, and the same blue light I had seen previously shot up into the air before hurling itself towards me. It engulfed my entire body and filled me with this feeling of power unlike anything I'd ever felt before. Before I could recover from what happened and regain my wits, Captain Thorpe began levitating into the air beside me and hurled a massive wave of energy towards me. I tried to hold off whatever it was he was throwing at me, but it was too much, and eventually it broke through, tearing through my body as everything faded to black.
You have stolen what is mine. And now, you will join me. No matter. You will be mine soon enough.
I woke on a beach, my mind still foggy, with a large man off in the distance. It took a few seconds to gather myself, put on my hat, and then I made my way over to him. He introduced himself as Aelstrom, before hitting me with the bombshell that I just died and been reborn here on this beach. He went on to remind me of what had occurred previously with the storm wall and my ship, as my memories slowly began to return to me. Apparently, a lucky few of us come back to life on this island, reborn anew, while others come back corrupted, with no soul, like the creatures I had dealt with before. After answering some of the initial questions I had, Aelstrom graciously offered to help teach me how to craft a skinning knife and cook up some local boars, so I could better survive out on this island he called Aeternum. First, he sent me off to collect some flint and wood to craft my knife. Then, I had to hunt down a boar to gather its meat to prepare into some rations, and boy was I hungry after what I'd been through. I guess that's what dying and being reborn does to you. I cooked the boar to perfection, and after filling up and regaining my strength, I made my way back to Aelstrom at his camp to discuss what was to come next. While there, he introduced me to his friend Erda, before going on to inform me of the tragic fate the rest of my crewmates had suffered. All of them fell to the corruption, and just off in the distance lay the remains of our ship, the Ambition, crawling with what remained of my former crewmates. Nothing could be done to help them, but I could still put them down to rest, and hope they don't return, so I headed off in the direction of their shipwreck to do just that, and to salvage for any extra resources I could find as well. One by one, I put my former friends to the sword. They still resembled the people I once knew and sailed with, but now with a mindless rage behind their eyes. As I laid the final one to rest, I gathered what I could from the wreckage, and made my way back to the camp. I went on to inform Aelstrom of what had just occurred, when our conversation was interrupted by the sound of pistol shots off in the distance. Maybe someone else had survived the corruption as well, and was in need of our help, but with more and more ships wrecking by the hour, and corruption spreading at an alarming rate, unlike anything Erda had ever seen before, we needed to also find the source of this growing threat, or going out looking for survivors would be inevitably futile. So we devised a plan. I would sweep the beaches, going from wreck to wreck, looking for survivors, while Aelstrom would head out to try locate the source of this corruption spike. With our objectives in mind, we both went our separate ways. I continued to hear pistol shots off in the distance, so I followed the noise, and suddenly, I was stopped in my tracks by the voice of a lady in my head.
You eluded me in death, but our souls are bound. I am with you. I am within you.
Her words sent a shiver down my spine. Could this be the same lady I encountered when I came face to face with Captain Thorpe? And how am I able to hear her? I was filled with so many questions, but I had to put them to the side for now, and focus back on the task at hand, in case someone was in dire need of my help. I continued on, as the pistol shots got louder and louder, the closer I got, until I finally found myself approaching a ship with the name Pride of Krato on the back of it. It was clear the fighting was coming from this ship, so I made my way around to its starboard side, and on top of it stood a lady with bright orange hair.
Eat ledger, bastards! So, here I am, fighting off the demon hordes, and I'm thinking, how the hell do I get down from up here? So what do you say? Maybe give a girl a hand?
I did what I could from the beach to aid in the fight, but truthfully, whoever this lady was, she seemed to have everything under control already. Once we finished clearing the corrupted from the ship, we headed off to a safe spot that she knew of, to regroup and make introductions. She introduced herself as Grace O'Malley, a pirate who had been taken down by the storm wall as well. I informed her of our camp nearby, but she was unwilling to go without plundering some of these washed up ships first, as she was going to need a lot of coin for a new ship and a crew. She then offered me a partnership in her endeavor, and after haggling her down from a 70-30 split in her favor to a 50-50 even split, we agreed to work together. I would help her scavenge what we could from a couple of wrecks before heading back to the camp to put an end to the corruption problem on the beach. She sent me off in the direction of a shipwreck that she'd yet to search, while she planned to circle back to her ship to gather some of her valuable belongings. So I headed off in the direction of the wreck, with a word of warning from Grace to be careful, as her first mate had previously went that way and never returned. My plan was simple: find the ship's manifest, so I could know what of value was on the ship, and then gather said valuables before meeting back up with Grace. Shortly after arriving at the wreck, I managed to find the manifest amongst the rubble, and I made note of a handful of several uniquely valuable items from Paris that were aboard the ship when it was taken down by the storm wall. These items included a silver candelabra from the court of the late King Henry the Great, a blessed chalice from Bishop Richelieu of the Church of Lucon, and an astrolabe used by Samuel Champlain during an early voyage across the Great Western Ocean. Little of that had any meaning to me, but hopefully Grace would be able to fetch a decent amount of coin for it, so I went forth and scavenged. Finding and collecting these artifacts wasn't difficult, as the ship seemed surprisingly calm, with no corrupted in sight. On my way back to meet up with Grace, though, I did end up running into her first mate, or should I say former first mate, as sadly, he too had fallen to the corruption. He was a brute of a man that fought ferociously, but my blade made easy work of him, as I put him out of his misery. Ever since I opened that strange box that called out to me, I could feel myself getting stronger and stronger by the hour, the more time I spent on this island. It felt incredible, like nothing could stop me. But I continued on to meet back up with Grace, and hand over my share of the plunder. Unfortunately, she wasn't as successful as I had been, with too many corrupted swarming her ship. I was feeling invincible though, and my confidence was sky high, so I volunteered to go get her valuables for her. She was so grateful she even offered to change our split to a 70-30 in my favor, so I headed off in the direction of her ship, the Satisfaction. Although most of her cargo had been lost at sea, she did ask for two things of me: to retrieve her ship's flag, and to get her lucky wheel, items of little value, but heavy sentimental value to her, so I agreed. We would then meet up at the camp later to discuss our next moves. She wasn't lying when she said there was a lot of corrupted around her ship, but I fought my way through one by one, until I had located her ship's flag at the bow of the ship. Once that had been retrieved, I made my way up to the bridge to collect her wheel, and then it was off back to the camp to regroup with the others. After we all filled each other in on what had occurred since we had last spoken, Aelstrom let us know that he may have found the cause of this increase in corruption throughout the beaches. A sea cave along the shoreline is swarming with corrupted, and dark crimson clouds hover over the area. Surely, if there was anywhere where we were going to find out what was causing all of this, it'll be inside that cave. So we decided that was our next move. I would meet Aelstrom by the entrance to the cave, but first, we'll go see if I could convince Grace to join us in the fight. It was quickly apparent, though, that there would be no convincing her. Grace went on to explain that she wasn't one for heroism or camaraderie, she was just interested in the coin. She was a woman of her word, though, and assured me that she would get me the coin she promised me. Her plan was to go ahead to the town she'd been told of just up the road to try and sell the items we'd salvaged, and she would set aside my share for when I caught up with her after I dealt with the corrupted. After we said our farewells, I headed off back towards the sea cave to meet up with Aelstrom. As I caught up with him, I could see his demeanor had changed. He was no longer his confident, loud self. Instead, he looked worried. He went on to explain that this was far worse than he had thought, and the corruption around the cave was unlike anything he'd previously encountered. He was worried it would spread to their camp, and that Erda may be in danger. I could tell he wanted to go back, so I offered to go ahead alone, while he went back to warn Erda. He graciously accepted my offer, and left off in a hurry, as I made my way towards the cave to put an end to all of this once and for all. The cave was swarming with corrupted, and an eerie feeling came over me as I fought my way inside. There was an evil presence that lingered in here, as the screeches of corrupted echoed around. To make matters worse, the voice I'd heard previously on the beach began echoing again in my head, speaking of the inevitable spread of corruption around the world. I continued on fighting deeper and deeper, though, into this seemingly endless cavern, until I found myself face to face with this odd-looking veil. It was held together by large, thick, tar-like vines, with a red glowing substance emanating off of it. Surely, whatever I was after was behind this veil, so I sliced my way through it with my blade until I emerged on the other side. I could see, just off in the distance, an unusual-looking creature that looked corrupted, but unlike any other corrupted I had seen before. It was as if this creature was praying to some kind of magical corrupted orb that was hovering in front of it. I slowly inched my way closer to get a better look at what was going on, when the creature turned towards me and charged at me. It fought unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. It was as ferocious as the rest of the corrupted, but it fought more tactful, and it seemed to have some kind of magical abilities as well, as it was drawing power from the orb, and summoning other corrupted to its side to aid it. It was an incredibly tough battle, but eventually, I managed to put the creature down and destroy the orb that it was praying to. Immediately, the horrible sounds that filled the cave faded away, and I could see light emerging in the distance. Hopefully, whatever it was I destroyed in here had put an end to all of the problems that were happening down on the beach, so I headed on back to the camp to see if that was the case. On the journey back, I was once again visited by the voice in my head. This time, she seemed a lot more angry with me though. Hopefully, that means we were on the right track, and landed a major blow to the spread of corruption here today. As I made it back to the camp, Aelstrom informed me that whatever it was I did worked, and that the corrupted has even receded away from the camp. However, Erda had seen things like this happen before on Aeternum, and whenever a corrupted come in such numbers, it's a sign of dark times ahead. The last time this happened, an avatar rose up and led the corrupted in a campaign to consume all of Aeternum. Maybe that was the voice that keeps calling out to me in my head. Either way, if an avatar is coming, all of the nearby towns need to be alerted to the coming danger, so Erda sent me on ahead to the town just up the road to warn them. I bid farewell to Erda and Aelstrom, and then headed on towards the town they referred to as Pridewind. Shortly after I left the camp, the voice in my head appeared to me once again, this time beckoning me towards a strange structure just off in the bushes. She promised she would show me the whole truth, and as I approached the structure, I felt a strange presence calling me towards it. As I reached out to touch it, my mind began flooding with images.
This island has always guarded the promise of paradise. Humanity cast out, deemed unworthy of such blessings. But I did not come here seeking paradise. I came for answers. Redemption after a life of weakness and suffering. And I found a truth that disproved everything I had been taught. I tasted the knowledge forbidden to us at creation, and I saw the vision of humanity's true potential. I knew then, I must correct this ancient injustice and restore the power which is rightfully ours. The heart of the mountain now beats strong with this purpose. After a century of preparation, our campaign has begun. The island's townships already fall before the might of our armies. The only thing I had not foreseen is you. You, who have stolen the gift meant for me. And now your soul will pay the price. For I will not stop until I have seized back the destiny stolen from us and brought true freedom to the world, both old and new.
I came to from the visions with a heightened sense of urgency and hurried my way towards the town with great haste. This lady had pure evil intentions, and I needed to stop her before it was too late. As I climbed the hill and began to see the town off in the distance, I was shocked and amazed. It was no small town like how I had pictured it in my head, but a massive city surrounded by a monumental wall. If the people on this island are this civilized, maybe we do stand a chance against the crazy lady in my head and her army of corrupted. As I approach the gate to the city, a man in a full set of medieval plate armor greets me. A strange thing to be wearing on such a tropical island, but then again, nothing seems to be normal on the Island of Aeternum. But that brings an end to Chapter 1 of the story of Aeternum. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving the video a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so be notified when Chapter 2 goes live. But until next time, have a good one. Thanks for watching another video, and a massive shout out to all the channel members and patrons who keep the channel going. Links on how to become one in the video description. If you'd like to watch Chapter 2 of this series, if it's available, click on the video to the left. Or, if you'd like to learn how to level up fast in New World, click on the video to the right.